Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor. Now it's time for your weekend tech tip, brought to you by Chevy Silverado.
This week's Chevy Silverado tech tip of the week is one of my favorite ways to fish, period. It's one of my favorite ways to, I don't care what species it is. You know how I feel about winter steelhead, right? That's like king of the world. But if you're talking about just fun and deliciousness, well, it's chasing silvers twitching, okay? And there's a number of different baits now to do this with. Back in the day when Mr. Kratzer and his colleagues up north, Mr. Bob Kratzer, matter of fact, we need to get Bob on. Let's see if we can make that happen for this upcoming weekend, Ryan, if we have the time for it and if he's available. Write that down. But when they came up with this technique years ago, again, up north in Washington, it took a little while for it to, migrate, right? To get to other places where people were learning and then bringing it to different locations, and it took off like wildfire. It is easily one of the funnest ways to target silvers and other species for that matter, but there's a lot of different versions. So in this tech tip, I just want to break down the different varieties of jigs and different baits that are out there. And again, there are, obviously these are my sponsors, everyone, but there are tons of great manufacturers out there of different versions of jigs, but they're all basically the same. It's just the components that now become very, very important. When you're talking about arrow jigs, they're using Gamakatsu hooks up to a 4/0 heavy X hook, which is extremely important, especially when you're trying to pull silvers out of wooded areas, areas where there's a lot of debris, which is where you find them, especially in tributaries where you're going to target them specifically. There's going to be some wood around, okay? And they have a great way of finding it, and you need to have a hook strong enough that you can put some muscle to it and just get that fish back to you, or at least keep it away from the debris, whatever it might be. Now, we're going to continue to talk about jigs, but there are, of course, other ways to go after them. There's no question throwing rooster tails or other spinners. This particular one is the 3/4 ounce, and it is a silver machine. And Chinook, by the way. But this is a fantastic bait to throw. And you can fish spinners and plugs while you're fishing twitching jigs, because they're very applicable in very similar situations. Now, some of them are going to be much more prone, or much better to use a plug or a spinner than, say, a jig. It all falls down to the zone and the area that you're fishing at that particular time. But just understand, if you have just a pocket full of 3/8 and 1/2 ounce, and even bigger, up to 3/4 ounce twitching jigs in any pretty much tributary setup situation, from the bank, from the boat, drift boat, power boat, whatever, you're going to be able to go after them. Fast water, slow water, frog water. It's just a very, very effective bait to utilize for silvers. The trick is you have to present it differently based on the type of water that you're in. And in order to do that, you have to be comfortable, and you have to have the gear that's going to actually let that jig or bait do what it needs to do. Because again, if you had a big hoochie like this particular one, a 1/2 ounce, and then you wanted to throw a 3/8 ounce jig head with the either marabou or bunny tail or bunny hair on there, they're going to fish very different. They're going to sink different. They're going to cast differently. So these two baits, although yes, of course, they're made for twitching, they are going to fish differently, and you'll start to feel that as you start to spend more time chasing silvers around twitching. And the reason why you're going to start to feel that is because you're going to need to find a rod that's meant for it. And I'll say this, a rod in that 7'6" to 8 foot range is about perfect. Now, Edge has a number of different versions of twitching rods, and they're relatively easy to find. I'm terrible on websites, but they do make it good for you here. You can go to different techniques, scroll down and click on twitching, and it'll pop up their rods that fit into that category. And me personally, I'm picking the 7'6" or something similar in that 8 to 17, 10 to 20-ish, fast action with very, very tippy, a lot of backbone to where you can move that twitching jig effortlessly. and you can see here, that fin that's on, maybe you can't. It doesn't help when I'm wearing black too. But you can tell that that is a very tippy rod. It's got a lot of tip to it, tons of backbone, because it's meant to fight, you know, Chinook. This ain't no bass rod. Now, it's bass fishing for fish that ain't no bass, right? You know, 15, 20-pound silvers if you actually ran across a trophy like that. This rod will handle it. Now, can you? That's a different story. That's a crazy fish. That'd be a dandy. But here's the setup. That rod, you know, 7.6, 7.8, somewhere in there, a little bit shorter. A handful of years ago, I was all about using bait casters, and yeah, it works, but it's nowhere near as comfortable, at least to me, as a good, well-balanced spinning rod setup, spinning reel setup. I like a 4,000 size reel so I can get a lot of pickup, a lot of line back quickly. 50-pound braided main line, okay? I would go with the P-line, the TCB, the X-Braid in 50-pound because it does not tip wrap as easy as 30-pound. And of course, you want to have that bumper of 30-pound P-line fluorocarbon. I like the Shinse. That's just me. Some say not to use that, but that's what I've had good success with. And it ties good knots when you're tying to your braid, right? When you're trying to make that connection, either be a uni to uni, Crazy Alberto, or any number of connecting knots there. Certainly a very, very good setup and very specific to twitching. So look it up. Try it if you've never done it before. It's certainly worth something to look into. And of course, Fisherman's will have all this there for you. And of course, you can even take advantage of the buy 3, get 1 free at Fisherman's Marine and from Yakima Bait for those twitching jigs. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you out in some way. That'll get you started. Now you just got to get out there and go chase them. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes, everyone.